Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Winfree, and what you're about to listen to is an old episode of a podcast I used to host called Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. This particular episode originally aired on May 30th, 2013, and features myself and my longtime collaborator and good friend Mark Radulich discussing Mark's favorite comic book character of all time, bar none. In fact, I believe he still has a poster of him over his bed, the Hulk. Now, this is part one of this series. Part 2 will be released tomorrow, and is myself and Robert Cooper discussing the Hulk's external antagonists. Guys like Thunderbolt Ross, the Abomination, etc. Forgive me, it's been a long time since I've looked at the Hulk's Rogues Gallery, so off the top of my head I remember those two pretty specifically. They're some of the more famous ones. But Mark and I took a slightly different approach here in this one, in that, again, the Hulk is Mark's favorite character because he represents a very psychological character when you get into the nitty-gritty of him. So we discuss the Hulk as his own worst enemy. How the different iterations of the Hulk have been different kinds of obstacles for Bruce Banner to overcome, how Bruce Banner is kind of a jerk. All of that is kind of on the table here, so it's the Hulk as his own worst enemy. It's a slightly different kind of discussion than you might normally get. If you're just looking for the more comic booky breakdown, next week. Tomorrow, that's the one you want to listen to. But this one, myself and Mark, we spend time, we talk the Hulk as his own worst enemy. So, with that in mind, I thank you very, very much for your continued support of all the things we do here on the W2M network. And past me, past Mark, you guys have a lot in front of you. I can only apologize that you turned into me, past me. Take it away, and thank you again for listening.
When the devil is too busy and death a bit too much, they call on me by name, you see, for my special touch. To the gentlemen, I'm misfortune. To the ladies, I'm surprise. But call me by any name, anyway, it's all the same. I'm the fly in your suit, I'm the pebble in your shoe, I'm the bee beneath your bed, I'm the bump on every head, I'm the heel on which you slip, I'm the pin in every head, I'm the thorn in your side, makes you wiggle and writhe. And it's so easy when you're evil. This is the life you see, the devil tips his hat to me. I do it all because I'm evil, and I do it all for free. Your tears are all the pay I'll ever need.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the dulcet sounds of Voltaire mean you're listening to Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. I am your host, the man who loves the dark side, the villainous Robert Winfree. Thank you for joining me. Tonight, we have a special topic. When I first started this podcast series, I knew we were going to discuss monsters. In fact, on the first show, we talked a little bit about that. And for the record, the first show was part 1 of the Terminator discussion, which part 2 will come out at some point. Not sure when, but eventually, at some point in the future. But we discussed monsters because they tend to go hand in hand. Not all monsters are bad guys. Godzilla has saved Tokyo as many times as he destroyed it. The Predator has made heroic appearances, especially in the awful Alien vs. Predator series, as far as the movies go. Different time, different discussion, but they've been around. They overlap a great deal. And to kick this off, there was only one person I could bring on to talk about our discussion tonight. We're talking about everyone's favorite big green monster. We're talking Bruce Banner, the Hulk. Yes, Hulk smash. The big guy, the big green rage monster with the purple pants that never fall off. Thankful. No one wants to see that. But I could only bring one man on to discuss the Hulk. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest. This man has a love of the Hulk that is not only unrequited, it is unparalleled. He's been working on a screenplay since he was in diapers. He saw every Hulk movie at least twice, no matter how bad they were. He sat through all of Iron Man 3 for the sole purpose of the Mark Ruffalo cameo at the end of the credits. He hosts the 411 Ground and Pound radio show every Sunday. Mark Radulich, everybody.
Dave Bautista has gone back to the WWE, and I feel like the only reason he's doing this is so that he can promote Guardians of the Galaxy on WWE television when that finally comes out.
Well, hey, he can put Cena over because we all know we need some work there.
Yeah, that young up-and-comer John Cena, he needs a rub. Oh, by the way, hello.
Hey, Mark. So, you love the Hulk.
Totally threw you off there, didn't I?
A little bit.
Yes, I have loved the Hulk since I was a little kid. I actually, in my office right now, there are 3 pictures over my computer. 2 of them are from when I think either the Hulk or the Incredible Hulk movie came out, and they were giving away these like free comic book cover pictures. So one of them is a Tales to Astonish with Hulk and the Abomination, and then the other one is the Incredible Hulk #1. These are picture frames of the comic book covers, and they are bookending a picture of Clutch on New Year's Eve with High on Fire, which I was at. So yeah, I had a Hulk towel when I was a kid. I grew up watching the Hulk television show with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. We all love that show.
Poor Lou Ferrigno.
When asked, if you could be a superhero, who would you be? Who would you want to be? And I said, I don't think it's a matter of want. I would end up turning into the Hulk. That would be me. I would become a giant green rage monster. But I've always felt him and Thor. Those are the 2 Marvel characters that I had an instant attraction to when I was reading comic books as a kid. And to this day, if I never read another comic book again, those would be the 2. Those 2 and Batman from the DC universe. Those would be the ones that I would continue to read, divorced from everything else. So yeah, I have a big like for the Hulk as a monster, as a hero, as a villain, all facets. And boy, for a big green rage monster, you don't get much more complex and multifaceted than the Hulk, in my opinion.
It's true. He is not just the big green rage monster. Well, he kind of is, but there's so much more that goes on inside the poor head of the big green. All right, since this is Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, and you love talking about the Hulk has not always been the hero. He's not always been the guy to save the day. He's not always thrown Loki around like a rag doll. He's been a bad guy. He's had some bad moments. The Hulk has leveled planets, cities, everything in between. When the Hulk's a bad guy, what makes that work for you? Because you still have love for the Hulk. He still can be the hero. What about him as a bad guy makes that not only compelling, but kind of lets him come back, too, since he's not strictly a bad guy?
Well, if you go back to the origins of the Hulk, I mean, I'm sure at this point it's people know the story. It's almost the it's the story of Jesus at this point. Everyone knows how Banner becomes the Hulk. But for the sake of this discussion, Bruce Banner is building a bomb, a gamma bomb. Rick Jones drives onto the test site. Banner goes to save him, and before he can get into the bunker where he's pushed Rick Jones into safety, the bomb goes off and it irradiates him. And then when he becomes angry, all of this repressed rage comes out, and he becomes a strong monster. Now, let's just stop there for a minute. Now, imagine, Robert, you are General Thunderbolt Ross, and you are in charge of creating weapons of mass destruction. Okay?
I'm okay with that. Hey, I would love to launch chainsaws out of a giant scattergun at people. I'm down.
Okay. So, Donald Rumsfeld, who's the Secretary of Defense, and for the purposes of this discussion, first one I can think of, Donald Rumsfeld says, Robert Winfree, go and here's a bag of money. Go get a physicist and go build me weapons of mass destruction. And when you finally get to one that's actually going to work, the test goes kaflooey, and you accidentally create a monster. You're not really worried about you're not overly sympathetic to the monster's needs or trying to solve the problem of this known physicist becoming the monster. All you want to do is kill the monster. And unbeknownst to you, the monster is near invincible, unkillable. Just
and
that
dating
dynamical. Well, yeah, and dating your daughter. Yeah, which is never good for Sunday dinners. It's the ultimate guess who's coming to dinner, isn't it? But just think about that for a moment and how that would that's I think why this really works for me is you've got this uncontrollable monster running around, and you can't just simply kill it because you'll kill the human being inside who you're trying to save. Meanwhile, this thing is destroying everything in sight. And and look, we are human beings, and while we watch movies with aliens and monsters and whatnot, if one actually shows up on your block, you're gonna freak out under normal circumstances. Not to mention you have this pressure of being a general in charge of a project, and your failure is running around showing itself with big shiny letters and signs that says, "I have failed miserably. Look at me, Hulk smash." So
it's true. That's not a good place to be in the dynamic between. Okay, this is part 1 of 2. I believe I mentioned that. The second part, which will be next week at some point, I'll have a different guest, and we'll be discussing the Hulk's rogue gallery, all of the bad guys that have come across that the Hulk has come across over his long and storied career. The one we do have to talk about here, as was just mentioned by Mr. Radulich, the great Thunderbolt, the General himself, Thunderbolt Ross Patterson. I sometimes forget. His daughter goes by the maiden. He's a general, and he's part of the military-industrial complex, and I have daddy issues. Whammy. Anyway, we do have to talk about Patterson, about Thunderbolt, because his relationship with Bruce Banner and the Hulk is what in large part defines the Hulk and Banner and their various interactions. So
it would be interesting to see what the Hulk would be if in the early comic books he wasn't being relentlessly pursued by a military who was not interested in talking with him. There was no hearts and minds. It was incapacitate, kill this thing, don't seek to understand it, don't try to cure Banner, just kill. And that drives the Hulk. I mean, and I think that's what makes him, he's Quasimodo in this particular dynamic. He's being pursued by angry villagers, essentially. And that's ultimately what makes a destructive monster sympathetic in the eyes of the reader, and what makes then Thunderbolt Ross unsympathetic, and what makes him a villain. But if you look at things at its face, it's a general trying to put an end to this monster who's causing havoc. It's only when you start to dig deeper that you see that the roles are really reversed in terms of who is the hero and who is the villain.
Yep. Definitely, and I do need to say, we're going to talk about the Hulk movies in a little, the various movies, in a second or two here. Well, you know what, let's just do it now. I had a slightly different timetable lined up, but if we're talking about Thunderbolt, we do have to talk about his portrayal on big and small screen. And since, Mark, you're a huge fan of the television show, and the sad walking away music, and poor Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno painted green, fighting a bear in the river. It happened, people. Look it up. Talk to me about Thunderbolt in the TV series. In many ways, the iconic element that brought the Hulk into popular culture. I mean, every comic book character that has gone from just being a comic book character to being a big phenomenon, a big pop culture reference, everyone knows who it is. You had to have something that kind of got behind it and got it going, and I think the television show really helps the Hulk as far as that goes. So talk to me about Thunderbolt as he's portrayed in the television.
I don't remember Thunderbolt. If we're talking about the Bill Bixby show, the part of Thunderbolt was actually Mr. McGee, and Mr. McGee was a reporter. It was the same dynamic. It was somebody relentlessly pursuing them for their own needs. But real quickly,
well, a reporter is much less sympathetic, so that makes sense.
Sure. To my recollection, the television show departs pretty far from the comic book origin. In the television show, what ends up happening is that, and this is, just as an aside, when we can come back to this, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but I rewatched the pilot episode. It was about an hour long, made-for-TV movie, maybe an hour to 90 minutes. And I said, if anyone's wondering, Josh Whedon, how to do a Hulk movie and do it right for the big screen, you really do need to go back and look at the pilot episode. The pilot episode, in my opinion, is flawless, despite the fact that it was, that it came out around 30 years ago. To me, it still ages well. It still feels right. But it is a made-for-television before CGI and all of that. So they depart seriously from the actual origin story. In this version, they spend the first about 10 minutes of the movie. There's no dialogue. It's just piano music and a sort of a white silhouetted flashbacks of Banner and his wife, girlfriend. Let's just, for the purposes of this, say it's his wife. And it shows them in love. It shows his life is just being wonderful, and you get to know these people in just dialogueless flashback. You know, having breakfast, doing this, and then
for those of us who haven't
change.
seen it, would that type of sequence be comparable to the opening bit of Up?
Yes.
If you haven't seen it and you need something that you can kind of wrap your head around to get where they're coming from, the opening 10 minutes of Up.
Yes, that is exactly what this is like, and it almost ends the same way. So there's this sharp change in music, and what happens is there's a car accident, and they go off the road, and his wife is then trapped in the car, and the car blows, and Banner is trying to get her out of the car, and his strength fails him. The next thing you see, and this is all going somewhere and important, is, you know, he's a scientist in this one too, and they're doing a study. This is about a year later. They're doing a study on how to tap into the body's limitless ability to draw on super strength, and under what conditions will this come about. And he finds the relationship causal between gamma radiation and stress. Fast forward. He starts to hear about all these test subjects, and they all have these enormous feats of strength, and he's, you know, a man possessed by the fact that his strength failed him on that day. And so he wants to know under what situations could he have had that strength and saved his wife, his beloved. Fast forward. He decides that he's going to irradiate himself with gamma radiation because he thinks that's the key. And unbeknownst to him, the machine has been reconfigured to where he accidentally over-radiates himself by about a factor of about 1 million, I think. It's some ridiculous amount. Then he has absolutely the worst day ever, which ends in a tire being blown out. And he's just everything is just awful at this point. He goes off the road.
He's had your day today.
Yeah, he's had my day. The car goes off the road. Tire blows out. He tries to fix the tire, and this is where I totally sympathize with him, because I've been here before. My wife calls this Donald Duck at the window, which if you've ever seen the Disney cartoon, Daisy says, "Can you open up the window?" He can't get it open, so he destroys the house.
Yeah. And the window stays closed and upright.
Right. So we call that going Donald at the window. So Banner goes Donald at the window on this car. At that point, he turns into the Hulk for the first time. So what ends up happening around this and then after that is that there's this nosy reporter, Jack McGee, which gave rise to the infamous Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You won't like me when I'm angry line, which is now famous.
And has been parodied in a number of ways.
Yes. So McGee is the one playing the role of Thunderbolt Ross, really. He is the one relentlessly pursuing Banner and the Hulk, because this is it. This is his big story. This mad scientist created a Hyde character, and this reporter wants the goods, and Banner won't give it to him. And that sets the whole series in, because at the end of it, I think he ends up accidentally killing his partner by the end of this thing. And then he goes into hiding, and the reporter is pursuing him. And so every episode, you know, he's got a new alias, and he helps a family, and the reporter is looking for him, and that's all however many scenes of the Hulk.
Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about the Hulk being the bad guy. And again, you know, it's not entirely his fault, because when you become uncontrollably angry, I mean, we've all blown up and done something stupid. I can't think of anyone who hasn't. And if when you blow up, you can almost literally blow up. I mean, at points he is able to generate exponential kinetic wave energies from his body that can destroy planets. And not joking, Hulk Worldbreaker, various forms of the Hulk. Another interesting discussion. But when you go nuts and, you know, you punch a hole in the wall, in the case of the Hulk, he goes nuts, he stays nuts, and he wrecks cities. It's difficult not to at least understand where that's coming from, but he's not been, and he gets used, and there is some sentience within the Hulk. He's not a blind rage monster 90% of the time, but there are times when you look at what the Hulk is doing or has done, and, you know, it's too much. He's not sympathetic in this moment in time. He's become the bad guy. He's become, how do we take this down, and everyone understands why we have to take him down. What memory, specifically, what comes to your mind if I say tell me something about the Hulk in a specific movie, television series episode, comic book. When's the Hulk a bad guy? Give me an example.
I can give you a few. In the earliest portrayals of the Hulk, the Savage Hulk as he becomes known, there's...
Not Mr. Fix-It. We're not talking about Mr. Fix-It.
No, we're not talking about Mr. Fix-It. The Savage Hulk. There's still a shadow of Banner keeping him completely from the abyss, which is important because the Hulk in a villain role is divorced from Banner. So I'll get there in a moment. But Hulk in his earliest portrayals is a lonely character. I mean, what he says, his motivation is to be left alone. So he's this monster being pursued by the U.S. Army, and all he wants is to be left alone. That's what he says over and over and over again. Hulk just wants to be. And that it's sometimes it's a little bit hard then to sort of imagine that's not a hero, really. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's a monster. Later on, there are a couple of. I think Hulk is at his most villainous when one of two things are happening. One, as I said before, Banner is completely divorced from the being, and he is just a rage monster. So there are two examples of it, two really, really good ones. There's an animated movie called Hulk versus Thor, in which the Enchantress and Loki bring Banner to Asgard and remove Banner, and Banner actually goes to hell, though he doesn't know he's in hell. And the Hulk is now left without a leash, without a mental leash. There's no Banner there to bring him back, at which point he is set loose upon Asgard and nearly wrecks the place. So imagine a being
Loki
so
tries
powerful.
to control him for a little bit, but Loki does not have the mental acuity to restrain the Hulk, and whenever he tries and I believe he tries to stop the Hulk from killing Thor or from killing Odin, I believe, and the Hulk basically slaps him out of his mind.
Well, that's the thing, is they think that they can control the beast, and the beast is uncontrollable, and so what you've created is a situation where this infinitely strong monster beset on destroying everything in its path is let loose in your home. So, Hulk is running around destroying Asgard, and Thor even says, you've set upon us another Ragnarok. And so the rest of the movie is Loki and Thor trying to reverse things and get Banner and the Hulk back in the box again. Banner back in the Hulk back in the box. But there's a really, really good example of where the Hulk is used as a villain, when he can be the most destructive force known to man. Another example of this ends with him being shipped off to another planet, and that is the prelude to the Planet Hulk series, which ran simultaneously against Marvel's Civil War. Because I'm telling you right now, and this was smart thinking on the part of the people at Marvel and the writers, had they included Hulk in the Civil War storyline, there's no way they could have pulled that off. But getting back to my point, the Hulk, something happens where the Hulk is working for S.H.I.E.L.D., and he ends up something blows up, and he ends up not being Banner for a little bit there, at which point he wrecks Vegas. And after destroying Vegas in a world that is getting tired of super beings wrecking their homes, Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, and Iron Man ship him to another planet.
The Illuminati get together.
It's a great way to deal with your problems. Ship him to another planet. Just get him out of here. It's exactly what England did with the criminals.
It's not the dumbest idea in the world.
I was going to say, it's an idea as old as time. This is how Georgia came to be. Georgia was a prison colony for England, and they sent their criminals to Georgia, and then it became the Peach State. So there you go.
Hey, Australia, too. They shipped a bunch of criminals to Australia, and now we have the Aussies and the Kiwis. The mighty Mark Hunt from New Zealand.
That's right, and James the Tuna.
But yeah,
I guess that's my best answer to your question is when you just use the Hulk as a destructive mechanism, and I think is when he's at his most villainous. The problem is you can only do that so many times because it's not like the Hulk is he's not Lex Luthor or Dr. Doom. He's not a great plotter of evil deeds. He has no motivation to take over the world. He just wants to wreck everything in front of him.
And that actually plays well in the Planet Hulk storyline where they try to turn him into a gladiator and he just doesn't care. And then you aggravate him a little bit more because you control the Hulk and he smashes everything, rules the world, wants to come back to Earth. And the Planet Hulk series leads us into one of the ones that I do want to talk about. With Banner still being in the Hulk, he is villainous. I do want to talk a little bit about World War Hulk because Hulk brings his warbound group, which consists of, I think, 4 other people, maybe 5. I'm not up to date on all of the comics. He comes back from his planet where he had a wife, he had 2 kids, he ruled the planet benevolently. Bruce Banner was happily ensconced within the mind of the Hulk. The Hulk is happy because no one's after him anymore. He comes back to Earth after the ship that sent him away blew up, killed his wife. Now he's pissed again, as he's the Hulk. He has to be mad. He returns to Earth and declares war on the planet, which anyone else says that, you kind of laugh. The Hulk says it, and we're in trouble.
Yep. Well, I mean, you just think about that. You know, you've been pursued for your whole life, essentially. You're an outcast. You're completely incompatible with the world around you, such to the point that people have elected to send you to another planet. And then you finally find a place of belonging. You create a family. For once in your entire existence, you feel human. You are able to attain the American dream, essentially, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and then a ship blows up and takes it all away from you. What cruel irony. What a cruel joke. I mean, so he didn't just get mad and declare war. I mean, he had the brass ring.
That's a tragedy of, like, Shakespearean proportion.
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, he finally
especially when it turns out that
Nate
was the one who rigged it to blow.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other story. But that's a critical element there, is that he thinks that he not only is aggravated that they shipped him off the planet to begin with, but he's made the best out of a bad situation. Now he thinks they were trying to murder him to start with. No, they weren't. He's betrayed by one of the Warbound. But at the time, he's thinking, you fuckers not only kick me off the planet, but then you try to murder me? That's it. You're dead. And even at that, he's a benevolent villain. It's true.
He's not Lex Luthor in it for money or to rule the world. He's not Galacticus who just consumes whole dimensions. He's not. I'm crossing. I'm crossing between Marvel and DC here, so I apologize to the purists. But he's not Darkseid. He's not Thanos. He's not this malevolent force. You see where he's coming from, and that in some ways makes him more compelling as a villain, because you can almost side with him by and large.
It's a revenge tale. I have had enough. And I want you, pointing squarely at Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, and Iron Man, to the point where he says, "Look, I'm not interested in hurting other people. Get them out of here quickly, because I'm coming. And my fight is with you people." And he wrecks Manhattan in the process. And then and then even at the end, he's saved by the fact that he turns himself in once he realizes he's fighting the wrong people. When he realizes that he's been betrayed by the Warbound, he allows them to. Infinitely more compelling than, say, Khan in Into Darkness, who gives up for who the hell knows what reason, and whatever convoluted plot line they were trying to get across in that movie.
Okay, fair enough. Don't be knocking Khan. Don't be knocking Khan too much. Benedict Cumberbatch, fine actor.
Who said anything about the actor? That was a
I know. The script writing there. But yeah, he set up the gladiatorial arenas and has Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, and Tony Stark fight to the death.
Right.
Basically, was that whole thing, and then he fights the Sentry, who, by the way, side note, I do at some point, if I ever want to go into this, purely from comic book villains, I have to find someone who will talk Sentry with me, because I enjoyed that character a great deal. But again, that's different than Here and Now. Here and Now we're talking Hulk. So specifically, since we've talked about the Hulk a little bit, we talked about him as the bad guy, him as the sympathetic guy. All right, it's time, I think, we talk about the movie. Let's go to the big screen here. We've talked small screen. We've talked comics. Talk to me about Hulk. Ang Lee's Freudian interpretation, Eric Bana playing Bruce Banner, the great, and I mean great, and his name just slipped my mind.
Nolte?
The great
Nick
what?
Nolte we're talking about? Nick Nolte?
Oh, not Nick Nolte. Sam Elliott playing Thunderbolt Ross. The great
Yes.
Sam Elliott. Love Sam Elliott. I will not tolerate negative things said about him in my presence. It ends badly for people. Sam Elliott, Bradley Cooper's in there. I think it's Bradley Cooper or Josh. It's Josh Lucas now that I think about it. Plays someone who dies. Josh Lucas dying is a plus. Jennifer Connelly is the love interest. Nick Nolte is the very odd version of the absorbing man and Banner's father. Talk about Hulk a little bit. How'd that whole movie play for you? What did you think about Nolte as the bad guy, Sam Elliott as the pseudo-bad guy? Let's just talk Hulk for a minute as far as Ang Lee's version.
Ang Lee's interpretation of the Hulk was almost dead on. Unfortunately, it also suffers from being a bit abstract, especially at the end. you change it, you tweak a few things in that script, and you add Doc Samson, and you actually have probably the best on-screen interpretation of the Hulk in all of its complexities. If I can direct us back to the comic book for one moment, probably one of the most compelling storylines in the Hulk is right before he becomes the Professor character. So for people who don't know, you have the Savage Hulk. At some point or other in the Hulk storyline, he reverts to being gray again, develops a different consciousness that he refers to as Joe Fixit, and then there's Banner. And then they start getting into Banner's childhood, and he's got all of these repressed memories of physical abuse and domestic violence, and that's sort of the genesis of the Savage Hulk. It's great stuff. Maybe it's a little heavy for people who are just wanting to watch a monster smash shit. But in defense of all of that, Godzilla was a movie where a monster ran around smashing shit and people hated it. Now, they hated it for a variety of reasons. Transformers is a movie where monsters run around smashing shit, and they hate it for a variety of reasons. But there's something to be said for a fun movie like that. It takes a steady hand and delicate balance to be able to have a monster running around smashing shit, but also present all of the complexities that make it interesting and meaningful. And I don't know if anyone in Hollywood's actually that capable or that talented. But I digress.
Like you said, Ang Lee, when I first saw this, people were complaining about it, and I saw it. And, to me, when you have something like the Hulk, when you have something that is driven by rage, you need, from our understanding of the human psyche, I mean, you work in that field professional. Newsflash, he doesn't get paid for what he does here on the Ground and Pound and with the Radulich Broadcasting. He should be. He's not. Someone pay this man for that stuff. But you need something, anger is a finite thing kind of inherently to a mentally well-balanced human being. You need something traumatic like that can tap into and create this exponential, infinite amount of rage that fuels the Hulk and creates his indestructibility and his ability to destroy planets, smash giant air worms from another dimension with a single blow, go blow for blow with Thor. I have to imagine that a lot of people presented, in that same situation where if I get mad I turn into the Hulk, it doesn't last very long. I mean, I talked a little bit about, you lose your temper, you punch a hole in the wall. Maybe if you lose your temper, you turn into the Hulk, you knock down a small building, you turn back. No, there's something seriously, deeply wrong in the mind of Bruce Banner that contributes to creating something that is so powerful it can wipe out a planet.
In psychological terms, it's not healthy for any human being to be at rage all of the time. You won't ever have time to sleep, and you'll die. So you're absolutely right about that. It isn't natural for someone to just be an angry monster all of the time. And if you ask those kinds of questions and you bring those elements into screenplay, that's compelling stuff. So why is Banner angry? One of the most fascinating things about the Marvel superheroes is that their superpowers were all connected to something about their psyche. The Fantastic Four was actually brilliant in doing this. It was every one of their, when they were irradiated from whatever thing happened to them in their spaceship, they all became an extension of their personalities in some way, shape, or form. Johnny Storm, the hothead, things like that. He becomes the Human Torch. So what's great about the Hulk is that they established that in the comic books that Banner has all of this repressed rage from having experienced domestic violence as a child and other things that have happened to him. And so you combine that with the gamma explosion, and that causes the Hulk. Now, if Banner grew up perfectly well-adjusted, functional, and he gets irradiated with radiation, maybe he becomes something else. That's, to me, the brilliant thing about all of it. So Ang Lee tried
in that particular movie, they touch on that a little bit later when Nick Nolte, solid actor, the way they wrote his character was awkward, to say the least, I think. But Nick Nolte, playing Bruce Banner's father, irradiates himself and becomes a very twisted version of the Absorbing Man instead of the Hulk.
And that's where I was going with this.
But as an extension of his personality, I see where you're going with this, and I agree. He's a scientist. He wants to become more than he is, and especially later in life after he's been arrested and lives on the street with dogs. So he gains the ability to absorb things, literally, and become them, and that becomes a bit odd and abstract in a lot of ways, but it makes sense in that it is, again, extended from his personality.
The problem with Ang Lee's of the Hulk is two things. One was pacing. If it takes a half an hour to 45 minutes before the Green Monster even shows up, that first fight scene better knock your pants off. You better get, it better be the Hulk versus the Thing. You know what I mean? It better be the Hulk versus the Abomination, the Hulk versus Wolverine, the Hulk versus the Juggernaut.
Beta Ray Bill, or Galacticus. You can go places, and instead you get him rolling around in the street with 3 souped-up dogs.
Yeah, and I was like, that's gay. Okay? I mean, I understand people's frustration with that. I remember I was with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, when we saw that in the theaters back in New York, and we both looked at each other like, seriously? Round 1 is dogs? Come on. What is it, a video game? Get the fuck out of here. That to me sums up everything that went wrong with the Ang Lee movie, up till the end where you get to the abstract absorbing man absorbing the sea scene.
Trying to absorb the Hulk's anger. I did like that he was sitting there and, okay, I'm going to absorb all of your power because you can't stop me because I absorb things I touch, and Hulk says, okay, fine, try, and Nick Nolte's disembodied voice going, no, it's too much, before the gamma bomb hit.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to ask of an audience to get themselves out of, this is supposed to be a fun popcorn summer blockbuster, into, I really have to really think about this. This is some sort of, weird abstract, independent
psychological
kind of a thing.
Yeah,
it's
it's a bit
come on, this isn't The Sixth Sense, okay? Let's what was the one with she's a Brittany something or other who's dead? It was a psychological movie.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but yeah, I know.
Yeah, especially with that vivid description, right? But my point is, if you're going to, this suffered from the writers and Ang Lee as a director not figuring out what it is that they were trying to do. It was like half summer popcorn fun eating, blockbuster, half psychological film, and unfortunately what it really became was a big train wreck. They tried.
Well, speaking of, if we're going to talk about, popcorn flick, watch monster blow stuff up, the follow-up that picks up more or less where this one left off is The Incredible Hulk. Everyone's recast. You have Liv Tyler as Betty Ross. You have Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. You have, I maintain they should have brought back Sam Elliott, because William Hurt, who takes over the role of Thunderbolt Ross, fine actor, very talented, earned his Oscar, great guy. I don't think you could get a better Thunderbolt than Sam Elliott. And I think, again, William Hurt, again, a great actor. I don't think, it's like whoever they're going to get to replace J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson when they eventually bring that character into the new Spider-Man reboot. It's, you cast the perfect guy the first time, and because you want to avoid being associated with the other films, you're going to cast someone else, and it's not going to be. And you have Tim Roth, another fine actor, as what becomes the Abomination. So, The Incredible Hulk, reworked, recast, totally different movie, presented very differently. How'd that one play for you? How was the Abomination as the villain instead of a pseudo-absorbing man, and Josh Lucas as generic douchebag number 37?
Okay. So let us assume for a moment that I'm asked to write and direct this movie, and and I'm Tim Burton. I've never picked up a comic book in my life, right?
Oh, please don't be Tim Burton.
Well, that's what this.
Then I'll have to mute you and find you and abuse you like something sharp.
The point that I'm getting at is I hate these directors who are given comic book movies and they're like, yeah, I fuck comic books. I've never read a comic book in my life, and I'm going to put my own stink on this thing. Good. You absolutely then don't understand the character. That was the biggest problem with The Incredible Hulk. If I know nothing about the Hulk and I'm just like, here, watch this movie, it's fine, I guess. It's a little flat. It's a little shallow, a little empty. But I mean, in terms of sort of a fun action movie where at the end monsters fight one another, it's fine. Tim Roth absolutely saves that movie. His performance is fucking amazing. I love his line when it's like, what does he have? I want that. Like he's ordering dinner.
It's true.
Tim Roth, you could give him like a recipe, like a cookbook, and just have him read ingredients in the cookbook, and he'll deliver it like awesome. Mr. Orange, love him. So yeah, Tim Roth is great in this movie, but that's it. That's all it is. It's somebody who doesn't really understand the complex nature of the Hulk and just sees angry rage monster running from the military, and he fights other monsters. Okay, you can't say it because it's me shrugging.
I actually didn't even care much for the visual way the Hulk looked in this movie. I thought the way he was presented on screen was better in Hulk as opposed to this version. And I have a hard time pinpointing why. This one looks a lot more like it was hand-drawn, I think. The action sequences with the Hulk were not, I felt, shot or put together very well. And
I'm going to say something, Robert, that is very controversial.
Go for it.
Because people look at Lou Ferrigno's interpretation of the Hulk, who's doing a better impression of Hulk Hogan than he is the Incredible Hulk, but I digress. Because of the subtext of the television show and Bill Bixby's performance as Bruce Banner, Lou Ferrigno's performance of the Hulk is the best of anything I've ever seen on screen, not being a cartoon. What people don't seem to understand is you could give me the best special effects, the best CGI, whatever you want to do, the best visual of the Hulk, nothing without subtext. That is the biggest problem I have with the Incredible Hulk. It was a lot of sizzle and no stick.
So is that, do you think, why perhaps the version of the Hulk done by Mark Ruffalo, 3 Hulk appearances in movies, 3 different actors, folks, no one can seem to get this right apparently until Mark Ruffalo. But is that why you think the Mark Ruffalo version of Bruce Banner lended itself to creating a more invested version of the big green monster in the Avengers?
Oh, 100%. Mark Ruffalo's the only person since Bill Bixby to nail the fucking character. Because the Hulk isn't a character. The Hulk is a device.
It's true. The Hulk is a plot device.
Banner. I said this about Batman. It doesn't really matter who you stick in the cowl. It matters who plays Bruce Wayne. If you don't get Bruce, this is why Michael Keaton's one of the best Batmans. If you don't get Bruce Wayne right, you won't get Batman right. Because you could have stuck Ray Park in the cowl. Okay, this is what I always loved about the Darth Maul thing. It was like, hey, we don't actually want you to act. We want.
They should put Ray Park in the cowl for. There needs to be like a web series now. Someone send Ray Park a replica of any version of the newest. Let's go with the newest. Let's go with one of the Nolan Batman costumes and let him beat the crap out of people. That will sell.
Yeah. Certainly the recent iterations of Batman in the Justice League movies or video games, just stick him in Batman battle armor and let him go fight stuff. But if you don't get Bruce Wayne right, you will fail to get Batman right. Batman is a device, not a character. The Hulk more so, because at least Batman has to talk, and the Hulk not so much. So Mark Ruffalo actually gets one of the most powerful scenes to me in the Avengers is when Ruffalo becomes the Hulk in the movie for the first time, and he's chasing the Black Widow, and it works for me because they've now pushed Mark Ruffalo beyond the point of being able to control him. Banner, call my character name. They've now pushed Banner to the point where he can't control himself anymore, and while he doesn't really want to hurt Black Widow, he's angry and he's just and he can't take the blinders off, and it's a simple character at this point. The Hulk is simple in this respect. The Black Widow hurt me. I need to hurt the Black Widow. And
thank heavens that Thor came along and distracted him.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. In Whedon's defense, if you don't understand the Banner Hulk relationship, and that's all you think of the Hulk is scenes like that, or him punching Thor at the end, sucker punching him. Sure, I can see why you would say we can't do a full-length Hulk movie anymore. The Hulk is tricky. It's tricky.
Yes.
Rock a rhyme. It's right on time. It's tricky.
Yes, tricky.
It's only
out of all the adjectives he could have chosen.
It's only tricky if you're an idiot who doesn't understand your media. Now, if you understand the Hulk, if you understand that in order for a Hulk movie to work, you must focus on Banner and intercut scenes of Banner dealing with his complex psychological issues with the Hulk smashing bad guys. Then you have a Hulk movie. If you don't understand that, then yeah, sure, I can understand why they don't want to do it anymore.
Well, at the same time, I think one of the problems with the Hulk is, as you pointed out with Ang Lee's version, it's difficult from a studio perspective, I suppose you want to put it. It's difficult to market, and I would hate to see. Okay, you and I happen to be in agreement when we talk about the Batman franchise that Batman Forever and Batman and Robin suffer from, among other things, and there are other things, studio involvement.
Yep.
And with the Hulk, I hesitate to. I don't hesitate. I shudder to think what a studio-involved movie would wind up looking like, because I imagine it would be worse than Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton version, not because, Marvel is at this point, a multi-billion-dollar movie franchise that spans a couple of different properties. They have Iron Man, they have Thor, they have Captain America. I don't know that Marvel could keep their hands out of a Hulk movie, and I don't know that you could market it properly, because most of the time, like you said, people go into that thinking, I'm going to watch a big green rage monster smash things, when that doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't even work. I don't even think it would work from a box office return perspective, in that, Transformers are nothing but watch stuff blow up, but they make money. I don't even think that Hulk in that case would necessarily make money.
I think it's all in. I think initially it would be a slow burn. I don't know, because as you're saying, the Hulk's already got some shit on him. 2 movies that that people came in droves and then they were disappointed. So you would have to almost rebrand and rebuild this particular property. So if I'm a studio executive and I'm given the dubious honor of having to rebuild the Hulk property so that it can be a star in standalone movies that does Iron Man numbers, the first one's gonna be a little difficult, because you have to get past all of these negative memories of the thing. Obviously, Mark Ruffalo now has a huge following as Banner and the Hulk, so I think people would be interested in seeing him run a full movie. So you're off on a good foot there. But if focus on, as I was saying before, the idea that the Savage Hulk, the Gray Hulk, and Banner are 3 distinct personalities. You throw in Doc Samson, a couple of bad guys, and at the end of it you get the Professor, and then you link it to the most recent comic book iteration of the Hulk, which is the Indestructible Hulk, where he's an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now you've got something, and you don't even and you can, and if you do that, and you can do Planet Hulk and World War Hulk later on as standalone and as an Avengers movie. You don't even have to do it right away, because if you can get Hulk to the point where he's the Professor, and this is the Professor character that for a while was leading the Pantheon, then now you don't have to worry about. Now he's not a big green rage monster anymore. Now he's Colossus. He's big, giant, green, strong, super intelligent. It's the Hulk with Banner's brain without all of the rage. Okay, if I tell you that that's your character, here's a character strong as it's fucking Superman, only he's green and doesn't wear a cape. You're telling me that we've got 97 versions of fucking Superman out there. If I tell you I just created you, your very own Superman for the Marvel Universe, and you tell me you can't do anything with that, go fuck yourself.
Fair enough. Although, to be fair, Superman can be very difficult to portray on film as well. Let's be fair. Superman 3 and 4. There's a reason the franchise and return.
Don't you disparage Superman? Hey! Wait a minute! Don't you disparage Superman 3? That had Richard Pryor in it.
Okay, fair enough. It did have Richard Pryor, and I'll be fair. The interactions between Richard Pryor and Superman when they happen are the highlight of that movie.
Oh,
what bothers me about that movie is, and forgive me for not remembering the actress who plays Lois Lane in the first 2 movies. I'm sure you know.
Oh,
but
God. I have to look up for it.
Okay. But she said some negative things about the director, or there were some issues with Superman 2, and Gene Hackman said a couple of things that were less than complimentary. So the director for 3 said, well, screw them. I can make a Superman movie without Lois Lane or Lex Luthor. And we get Lex Luthor with hair, basically, and Lana Lang, who is portrayed by Annette O'Toole, who is Clark's childhood sweetheart. So he basically said, screw these characters. I can put anybody in that same type of role, and it still be a Superman movie, and you'll still go see it. When in reality, the only good parts about Superman 3 were, most of them involve Richard Pryor. Personally, his drunken hacking of the
I still do that impression. I actually refer to shit as the Philly Flash. I don't even know what he... Oh, yeah!
Yes, I get a kick out of that. I get a kick out of that, too, because he's sitting there and he's drunk and he's this unintentional computer prodigy. But he can't... The 2 cards that he has to put in are too far apart for him to reach. They have to go in at the same time.
Yes.
And
first
poor
of all,
drunk Rich...
The best, most well-acted scene of that movie is him interacting with a computer.
It's that, and the other part of that movie that I enjoy is, and I think there's something wrong with you if you don't enjoy this, is Clark fighting Superman in the...
Yes.
Because the way that went, good, wholesome, mild-mannered, upstanding Clark Kent fights off-kilter, douchebag, I get drunk and I break stuff because I'm drunk, Superman. And God bless Christopher Reeve for being able to act those two very separate personalities convincingly and in the same role as himself, basically. And we're getting way off topic here because we started with Marvel and the Hulk and we're now discussing Superman.
Yeah, and I got a whole podcast dedicated to that. But the point that I was getting at, by the way, the answer was Margot Kidder.
There we go.
But the point that I was getting at is, if I hand you basically Marvel's version of Superman, and then you tell me you can't make a decent movie out of this, 4 or 5 different deep movies out of this, then quit the movie business. There's no excuse for it. And I think, without putting the particular person on blast, but I had gotten really angry that Joss Whedon had said publicly we can't do another Hulk movie because he's a tricky character, and I was throwing all these ideas out there on Facebook about it, and and then some people were like, well, no, it is tricky, and here's why, and I'm just going back and forth, and this movie was not successful, and that movie was, and blah blah blah. But the point that I was getting to was, there are a couple of ways you can pull Hulk out of this area where everyone seems to be convinced he can't get out of, and I just told you how to do it. Do a movie where he becomes the Professor. Because once he's the Professor, you can go in all kinds of directions, and then you can have a lot of fun bringing him back to being savage. Planet Hulk, World War Hulk, Hulk versus Loki, all kinds of things. I'm sorry, Hulk versus...
I would kill to see Mark Ruffalo and Hugh Jackman square off. I mean, because Wolverine's another indestructible character. He and the Hulk could fight for eternity. I mean, and look, you've got Wolverine standalone movies coming out, and, God bless Hugh Jackman because he does Logan so perfectly. The issues with those movies have nothing to do with Hugh Jackman and his interpretation of Wolverine. But if you want to do a standalone Hulk movie, and even if let's just say you want to make a Michael Bay movie, a popcorn movie where stuff blows up. Bruce Banner, he's living with Tony Stark in Stark Tower now, apparently. He goes, he's investigating ways, maybe even to reverse his condition because he doesn't like it. I mean, let's face it, no one would like to be Bruce Banner. I mean, we all, the Hulk's great, and he's a fun movie device, and the whole thing is a great character, but if you have to live as Bruce Banner, no one wants to live as Bruce Banner. I mean... Let
me interject here, because I can do it in 50 words or less.
All right.
Any one of the devices that I talked about before where basically you divorce Banner from the Hulk is your 10 to 30 page in Act 1 culmination. Something's got to happen that divorces Banner from the Hulk, and now the Hulk is running wild. And then the next part of your movie is trying to get Banner back in the box again. And then when you do that, you take the time to explore what's going on in Banner's mind and why he would not want to get, why he doesn't want to get back inside the Hulk, and all of that stuff, all the stuff that we talked about before, all of the things that they talked about in the comic book that led to the creation of the Professor. So, part 1 is some person somewhere, something. If you're so convinced that the Hulk by himself can't be in his own movie, then do the Thor thing. Do Hulk versus Thor as your next Hulk movie and let him go destroy Asgard. Because when it's over, you can differentiate yourself a little bit from the culmination of that movie, which was Thor and Loki go get Banner out of hell, and put him back in the thing. There's ways that you can get back there, but there's your movie. Loki.
I was going to say, if you want to do that same type of thing, you can have. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but you come up with a way to separate Banner from the Hulk. Hulk goes on a rampage, and in order to try and rectify this, we get Professor X, who is one of the most powerful telepathic beings there is, who for some reason they killed in X-Men: The Last Stand.
Not Professor X, Doctor Strange.
Why not?
This is your opportunity to get Doctor Strange in the movie.
Okay, that would work. I was going to say Professor X because he could then send Wolverine to go subdue the rampaging Hulk, and we could get Wolverine and Hulk fighting across landscapes for, you need an action break while you get Doctor Strange or Professor X goes inside the mind of Bruce Banner. You can intersperse Hugh Jackman as Wolverine fighting big CGI'd Hulk, and that would break up the action sequences and the psychological looking into things or Doctor Strange could call Wolverine. I mean, I'm just saying, there's a couple of guys who could fight the Hulk and be believable and create big explosions, for want of a better phrase. And it's an absolute shame that Fox and Marvel are so divorced from each other, because Wolverine versus Hulk, if you need a cheap, so to speak, summer blockbuster, have those two go at it.
Mm-hmm. Again, and if you want to use an established character within the Avengers universe, do the one with Thor. At least then you've got a cartoon movie script to go off of. There's a couple of iterations of this that you could do. You could, like I said, you could bring in Doctor Strange. You could introduce Doc Samson, who was actually responsible for the merging of all the personalities. There's a way to do it. There's other characters that are established that they could bring in, but that's your basic thing. Hulk is divorced from Banner. Hulk goes on a rampage. They spend the rest of the movie trying to get Banner back in the box, and finally, voila, Hulk Agent of Bam. Now you're ready.
And, since we're talking about Thor versus Hulk, which is on Netflix, it's paired with Hulk versus Wolverine, by the way. If anyone has Netflix, you should. But at the end of that movie, they do, because Bruce Banner does not want to go back to being with the Hulk in that movie. There's a big point of contention there, because he's I'm happy.
But that's why I wanted.
Dead.
Did you ever see? Hang on. Did you ever see Star Trek Generation?
I'm dead and I'm happy. Leave me alone. Don't pull me.
But that's where I was going with this. Have you ever seen Star Trek Generation?
Yes.
Okay. Fucking Kirk. Same deal. He's in the Nexus, and I don't mean the thing with the shitty wrestling plotline. He's in the Nexus, whereas Guinan says he's wrapped up in a warm blanket of love and contentness, and he doesn't want to leave. Picard's like, come, you're the only man in the universe who can help me take down the dude with the ray gun.
Ian McDowell.
Thank you.
It's Ian McDowell that acts it, so we'll call it Ian McDowell.
Ian, yeah, you're the only man in the universe I can get.
That is not his last name. Now that I think about it, I don't know.
I liked old British guy with a ray gun.
There we go, and a scar.
But
gotta have the scar.
It's a convoluted movie, and I'm not by any stretch saying Generations was a good movie, but they spent an enormous amount of time in that movie dealing with Kirk and his whole thing about, after years of flying a starship around the galaxy and fighting Klingons and Khan and all these people, I have finally found happiness, and you want to take it away from me by sending me on one last ride? Get the fuck out of here.
That will probably kill you.
Yeah, that will probably kill you, and oh my, it does. Well, there's your Hulk movie, and you'll have a better payoff, because it won't be two old dudes fighting Ian, whoever your name is, with a ray gun. You'll finally have a fully functional, brilliant thinking Hulk that can destroy stuff. It'll be awesome. Is anyone from Marvel listening? Sorry.
Probably not, but hey, we can hope. But I was going to say the point about the end of that one is they finally get them back together. Bruce reluctantly agrees to be put back within the Hulk, or the other way around, depending on who's pitching and who's catching, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then they send the Hulk and Banner back to Earth, and everyone in Asgard is able to recognize the monumental sacrifice that is. And, I mean, that's not lost on them. They hold a feast, and they all toast Banner because he's the one who saved them, and poor Banner's back on Earth doing the sad walking away thing with the piano music because he's back on Earth and everyone wants to kill him.
Yep. I mean, like I said, we've now discussed any number of ways that they could do a Hulk movie. It's not that hard. It's if you and I could figure this out, with very little, pre-chat on a podcast, I don't understand why professionals in Hollywood can't get it together.
Hey, we could have saved the Scream franchise too, but no one listens to us.
Paranormal Activity, Scream. I told my wife, I said there are really only, if I could, if a genie pops out of a bottle and says, I'm going to grant you one wish, and the one wish is to have the career of your choice. It's going to be one of two things: talk radio host or consultant for movies. I don't think I have the technical expertise to direct, and at 37 years old, I'm not going back to Hollywood to try to work my way up to be an executive within a studio. So I just want to, and I don't want to be a screenwriter. But bring me in as a creative consultant on set or in pre-production. That's me, Mark Radulich, consultant to movies. That's what I want to be.
Oh, you and everyone else.
Let me save your movie.
Yes. We will. You know what? You, me, and Sean Comer, we need to open up the We Will Save Your franchise consulting firm. If you've got
awesome.
but I'm only half joking about this because
we'll call ourselves
you've got
the
The Rock.
Crap-busters. Hang on. We'll call ourselves the Crap-busters. We are ready to save you.
It's true. We'll come up with an awesome theme. We'll listen to metal all the time. And I'm just saying, you've got The Rock out there who is the franchise savior at this point. I mean, by and large, The Rock saved G.I. Joe. The Rock saved the Fast and Furious franchise. You know, he's out there saving things. He's going to be Hercules, and if he was Hercules as part of the Marvel Universe, I would be happy. I heard a rumor that they were looking at casting him as Luke Cage. Again, look, The Rock needs to be a superhero in Marvel or DC. I mean, what's wrong with you? Another note to studio executives out there. Hire The Rock.
I think they should make him Colossus.
You know what? Why not? Colossus, Luke Cage. If you want to do The Rock as a bad guy, he could be Black Adam.
He could be, you know what? It would be even better. Let The Rock be Doctor Strange. That would be awesome.
You know what? Why not? I mean, look, hire The Rock. The Rock's a great guy. No one promotes movies like The Rock does. It does, and I'm not just saying he'll go win another WWE championship, although if it's not Cena, I'm happy. Haha, that's actually not true. But that's a different discussion. Well, we talked about the Hulk a lot. Him as a bad guy, some of the bad guys he's faced off against, the studio executives being bad guys for not being able to give the Hulk a decent movie. There's a lot of bad guy stuff to go around as far as the Hulk goes. We could even bash on Eric Bana and Edward Norton for their portrayals of the Hulk because they didn't do anything justice. We can go on and on about bad guys in the Hulk universe. And we will, in fact. I will not have Mark Radulich with me. I believe I will have Robert Cooper, who was on for my last podcast discussing villainous corporations. I believe I'll have him here, and we'll go through the bad guys that the Hulk faces, the Hulk's Rogues Gallery. He's got some doozies. We'll talk more about Thunderbolt Ross and him becoming the Red Hulk. Dun, dun, dun. We'll have to touch on Abomination, a bunch of other stuff. But that will be the next part of this. There will be a part 2 of the Hulk. We will look at his Rogues Gallery. It should be next week. So that's the immediate future of Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. Mark, what do you want to plug?
Tuesday is, and because Turnabout is fair play, Robert Winfree comes back on the Long Road to Ruin, and we will close up the Scream franchise with parts 3 and 4.
We will have a long discussion of former WCW World Heavyweight Champion David Arquette.
Yes, and his stellar acting ability. Man limps like nobody I've ever seen on screen. In a couple of weeks, when Man of Steel comes out, Jeff Harris and I will do our post-movie discussion of Man of Steel, and then the Tuesday right after that, I think the next day, Long Road to Ruin, we'll do a special 2-hour-plus episode examining in one Long Road to Ruin all 4 Christopher Reeve Supermans. Note,
hey, you got a guest lined up for that?
You know, everybody wants in on that podcast. This may end up turning into a panel discussion, but because Cooper wants in on that too. But so you know, it's Superman week when I come back from the Outer Banks. The Tuesday after that, Megadeth Part 2. If you haven't had an opportunity to, go check out this week's Past Music podcast. We looked at the first 6 albums of Megadeth. If for no other reason, forget about me, forget about Megadeth, just listen to that podcast so you can hear Robert Cooper's impression of Bane. And Robert Winfree, you simply must have Robert Cooper talk about at least one of Hulk's characters in the guise of Bane. It's hilarious.
I will insist on that. And, you know, it's sad because I love Tom Hardy's interpretation of Bane, and I did love the voice, but, you know, even sometimes great things are just the easiest to parody.
Oh, God. When Robert Winfree does his impression of
Cooper.
Of Bane, when Robert Cooper does his impression of Bane, I clap and laugh like a little girl. I just think it's the funniest thing in the world. And last night he did serious analysis of one of Megadeth's albums just as Bane. I almost ended the podcast. I was like, yeah, I'm done. That's all we need to hear.
Never top.
Yeah, exactly. It's not getting any better than that, folks. Sunday night, every Sunday night at 9 o'clock is the 401 Ground and Pound radio show, as Robert indicated earlier. Robert is one of our panelists on that, along with Pat Mullen and the aforementioned Jeffrey Harris. Thursday nights at 9 o'clock on The Right Hook. On FromTheRightRadio.com. FromTheRightRadio.com is The Right Hook, where John Brodigan and I take a look at all the fun stuff happening in the news and some serious stuff to boot. We are sponsored in part by Florida Man and now Florida Woman. Florida Man and Florida Woman, funniest thing I've seen on Twitter all week. You can also check out previous podcasts I've done on thecasualheroes.com. I've been on both their wrestling podcast as well as their MMA cast. So, yeah, I'm two-time and 411. That's how I roll. All right, I think that's it for the interim. Robert, this has been wonderful. I'm very, very happy.
Don't you go into X-Pro. You don't get to close this out. It's my show. I close it out.
I'm not closing anything. I'm being grateful, you bastard.
Oh, you were. No, I recognize Mark Radulich's closing voice.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay. Well, say thank you, but don't do your closing voice.
I won't. I won't tell everyone to be well, be safe. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, thanks for having me on. I could talk about the Hulk, as you can tell, for hours, and it was a lot of fun to be able to come and do this just for the little bit that we did. Got a lot off my chest.
Hey, I'm glad to have you. Anytime I do one of these, you're always welcome if you feel like you can talk about the subject matter or want to. If you ever have one you want me to do, I am always open to ideas. This goes out to anyone listening. If you have a particular villain, a series, a rogues gallery that you very much want me to cover, want me to find someone to cover with, let me know. You can find me on Twitter. I'm going to plug my Twitter account. It is @WinfreeMMA. So you can hit me up there. I write a weekly column in the 411 MMA zone called Locked in the Guillotine. Comes out every Friday, including this Friday, where I look back at the bloodiest card in UFC history, unofficially. You can ask me there, or in the comments for this on Blog Talk, in the comments for this, hypothetically on 411 Mania, I believe it gets submitted there. It's not always up, but it should be, because this is awesome. I have great guests. I contribute something. I'm not a detriment anymore. Ha ha ha. Take that, mother-in-law. Kidding, I'm not married. So, hit me up there. Again, I'm open to suggestions about that. Anybody wants to guest spot. If you feel you can talk about the subject matter, you don't even have to be all that entertaining necessarily. I will bring the entertainment. I will load funny noises into this, and I will play those if we need that for entertainment value. Guests are open. Topics are open. Hit me up if you want me to talk about something like that, or if you want to be on this show. I'm not an elitist. Just don't be an idiot is all I ask. Sometimes that's too much. Sometimes it's too much. So, plugs are done. Mr. Radulich has again expressed his happiness at being on this. He is welcome anytime. My only plug, my column every week, Friday, Locked in the Guillotine, MMA News Report. I cover news, I cover fight cards, I preview, I review. This week I also look at the current crop of UFC champions and why I don't care who's facing them because they're going to lose anyway. Yes, Chris Weidman. Yes, Johnny Hendricks. Yes, Alexander Gustafsson. I'm looking at all of you. Make me care because you guys are not. So, with all of that having been said, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, Robert Cooper and I, Hulk's villainous crew, we'll look at all the guys Hulk smashed over the years. Thanks for listening. Remember, villains, they're everywhere. They make life sweeter because light is only as bright as the shadows allow it to be. Have a good night, everyone.